Well, good morning. It is nice to be here this morning. Even though the rain is outside, we know that the rain will produce some beautiful things, some beautiful flowers and crops. And so we are thankful for that, even though we get a little damp during the process. Well, as you know, we've been going through the NEWSTART. And today is our final couple of letters. As we started through, we went through each letter. So we went through nutrition, and we went through exercise, and what happens with that, and with water and sunlight, and our temperance, taking care of that, and also the air that we need. But today we're going to cover the last two letters. And the first one is R, and that is for rest. We all need rest. As we look at the different types of rest, I saw that picture that I put in here, and it really just kind of spoke to me. There are moments, we can be so busy in life. Even now, even in this stay-at-home process, we can be so busy in life that we don't get that rest. And our bodies need it, our minds and our hearts need it. And so as I was reading through some of the different things that are blessings, if we take that rest, it enhances our brain function. So it helps us to think better and process things better if we take that time to rest. It helps us to make better decisions when our minds are rested and able to process better. It can also help us balance our emotions. Some of us, me included, can get pretty emotional sometimes. And sometimes when we have that rest, it helps us to balance things out. One of the other things with our bodies, when we rest, when we take that time to rest, it helps renew and heal us. There are so many different things that it does. When we take time to sleep, we need that time to sleep. And when we are sleeping, those T cells are enhanced. And as Levi and I call them, there are germy fighters. They come out and they start doing that cleanup in our bodies that we so desperately need. It helps to heal inside of us. It helps to lower inflammation. And for me that has a disorder in that way, I guess I need extra sleep to deal with the inflammation that happens with me, but we can all have that. And so by getting that rest that we need, it also lowers our risk of heart disease. And I also did a lookup. I'd always heard the hours before midnight were worth double. Well, actually, there's research that does prove that. It's because of our circadian rhythms. There's a certain time before midnight that is the strongest phase of our sleep. And during that time is when the most fixes happen in our body. So we need to make sure that we get to bed early so that our body can do the healing that it needs to. But most of all, we need to take time to be still with the Lord. Be still and know that He is God, especially during this time. That there is so much going on and so much that we may not understand. That taking that time with the Lord to be still and know that He is God, that He is in charge of all that is going on, and that He will be with us is so drastically important to us, because when we do that, we can find peace and rest. And when your body is able to be at peace and rest, it has more ability to function correctly. One of the verses that really spoke to me was in Matthew 11:28. It says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." So the last couple of weeks have been a bit trying, and we all need to find that rest in the Lord. And He says if we will bring it to Him, He will give us that rest. And we can find that desperate rest that we need for our souls. It doesn't mean that we won't have times of tears, But when we know that the Lord is with us, we can find a certain kind of peace in them. If we are willing to take upon his yoke and willing to give all that we have to him, he will help carry that load that really we cannot carry. The last letter that we are going to cover is actually T. And this is trust in God. You know, as I was reading through the different things that they had on the NEWSTART website for trusting in God, it talked about that spiritual and mental peace that we can have. It helps us to make better choices, because when we make choices out of fear and anxiety, we often don't make those right choices. And if we take that time to trust in the Lord and take it to him, we can make much better choices. As I was reading through the different things, it also talked about how, in regards to our physical healing, they've actually done research on this in multiple ways, and they actually have shown that it actually lowers our cortisol levels and increases our white blood cell count when we trust in the Lord. I also know that I was, many years ago, I was doing some research for a project for school, and they did a research on prayer. And they had a group of people in the hospital that were prayed for. Not all of them were people that believed in God, but they had two different groups, and they didn't know who was being prayed for. Now, the ones that were prayed for were actually, the majority of them all walked out the door healthier, much healthier than the ones that were not prayed for. And I found that quite amazing, because that means that our words count, you know? And so, you know, one of the things that I found in trusting in the Lord is that many times we are taken through storms. And I saw a picture. I was in Hobby Lobby. That's one of my favorite shops to go to. And I saw a picture, and it had a sailboat. And it said, sometimes he calms the storm, and other times he calms the sailor. And I think that applies for all of us right now. One of the verses that stuck out to me in regards to trusting in the Lord, it said, "Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord and whose hope is in the Lord. For he shall be like a tree planted by the waters, which will spread out its roots by the river." Now, if you continue to read on in the verse, it talks about it does not fear when heat comes. The leaves are always green, and there are no worries in the years of drought. It continues to bear fruit. Do you know that we are all considered trees? You know, in the Bible, it talks about leadership being, those are trees, but each person, you know, that we have those roots that have to be dug down deep, because when the storms come, when those winds blow, those trees bend. You know, we have quite a few woods around us, and not too long ago, the wind was quite heavy, and you could see those trees bending and swaying in the breeze. And those are our trials. If our roots are deep and grounded in the Lord, no matter what, we can handle those trials. And, you know, a few years back, I went through a very, very hard time, and I felt like I was in a pit and I couldn't get out. And the Lord kept calling to my heart to say, trust me through these storms. And, you know, I kept going to the Word of God. Sometimes it was hard to read, and sometimes it was hard I would read it and not understand it, but I could feel his closeness. And he just said, I kept hearing, trust me through this time. And, you know, as I started to trust him, and I kept opening the Word of God, and I kept crying and praying out to the Lord, he blessed that time. And I was able to move on and learn from it. And I think that's, you know, those times are when we have to walk by faith and not by sight. And I remember the story of Elisha with his servant. And he said to them, you know, he prayed for the Lord to open the eyes of his servant, to know that the Lord was there, and that when the servant's eyes were opened, he could see all the thousands and legions of angels that were there. And so during times of trouble, when we choose to trust in the Lord, He is there and He loves us. And so I just wanted to, it's been hard the last couple of weeks. And I don't know, Daniel and I have spent much time in prayer for the families and much time in tears. But the Lord has continued to remind us to trust and know that the Lord loves you. Thank you.